It's time to break down what went right and what went wrong during this week's game. Severe Reaction is on the air with your host, Michael Severe, and the most important voice of all, yours. Severe Reaction starts now. Powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Only on 1620 The Zone.
3rd and 2 at the 6-yard line. Two tight ends right, Raiola under center. He in motion left to right, snap, spin, handoff, Chauncey angles left, he's in, untouched. Touchdown Huskers. EJ is money tonight. 39-0. Led to a 47-point lead. The 28 of Akron under center Latif. Single back Ives, snap, handoff Ives, has a lane, 20, all alone at the 10-5. He's in. Touchdown Huskers. Quentin Ives, second career rushing score. Nobody was near him. As Nebraska's cracked the half-century mark, 53-0.
I don't know, 40 minutes for the game, 30 minutes for the game. I was able to point our student section. I want to make sure I thank them. You know, our student section was filled early before games. These are the things that differentiate us in recruiting. So I want to thank the students. Great crowd tonight. Thank everyone who came, and especially thank all the people who stayed to the end. You know, one of the key things in a game like that, besides getting the shutout, I think the shutout was very important for us. I think it's the first time since when?
2009.
2009. And we're not that the history of it matters to us, but just, you know, we played a lot of players. I think every player that could play got in the game. Maybe one or two didn't. I don't know. But we were able to get a lot of players in the game, a lot of players who work hard, who sacrifice.
Happy Sunday morning and welcome to Severe Reaction, 1620 The Zone, inside the 1620 The Zone studios. I am Michael Severe, producer Joey wearing his Green Bay Packers gear for the opening Sunday of the NFL. It's time. I don't know if I'm ready yet. I watched the two TVs yesterday with like 7-8 games going on at a time, and I was like, this is getting me ready for the NFL, but I don't know if I'm ready yet for the NFL. But in the meantime, we got lots to talk about when it comes to Nebraska football. Listen, man, you can say whatever you want, and a lot will be said about Akron. You can say whatever you want. But when you score, and I said this about Houston Christian last week, I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if you're playing some of those teams that Nebraska played, like 1892, you know, like Little Sisters of the Poor, whatever. I don't care. You score 69 points on somebody, you've done something. You score 68 points on a FBS team. I don't care what you think about Akron. I know they're scoreless so far in the season. I mentioned yesterday after going through and watching all the highlights I could against Wyoming, they really only had about 4 or 5 players that stood out. One of them was their punter. And you go against a team like Akron, you go in there, you shut them down, you perform as well offensively as you performed in a very long time, and you move on. That's basically what Coach Rule said as well. You take care of business. And there's a lot of teams yesterday that did this against FCS folks, right? Now, you got to give Oregon all the credit in the world because they just stumped a mud hole in Oklahoma State, which we saw coming, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, as soon as Gundy made those comments about Oregon, and you know how Dan Lanning is, remember how he was against Colorado?
Yeah, you're curious on what that pregame speech was like.
Yeah,
what was said before the game.
I think it sounded a lot like the speech that was given on the sideline of Remember the Titans. They will not gain another yard. We're not giving up any points. We're going to kick their butts. And they did, 69-3. Nebraska winning 68-0 over a BCS team. One of the, not a very good, not BCS team, FBS team. But you know what? When you get a blowout like that, it gives you a chance to work on so many things. And we won't know exactly how much they got out of that game besides the win until later in the season when a Quinn Clark needs to be counted on, right?
Yep.
When a Mosey has to come in and play the slot receiver position because Bonner's out for the year. This is an investment. This is a 401k, right? You're just paying into the 401k here against Akron. And then maybe later in the season, you're going to have to take a little money out. Now, of course, whenever you do that, you have to pay the taxes on it. So that's not always a great investment. But you understand what I'm saying. It's an investment. And that's what Nebraska did. You look at some of the other teams. Penn State was in a war with Florida International for a while. I remember that. I looked up, it was 10-0 at half. Imagine if you were last night in Memorial Stadium playing Akron and it was 10-0 at half. Imagine the energy.
You hear a lot of mumbling in the crowd, just
Yeah.
a lot of unsteadiness.
Because yesterday, and look, I've been to a lot of Husker games, not as many as some, more than others. I don't remember ever being that difficult to get in the stadium. The lines to get in the stadium with about 25 minutes, 30 minutes before kickoff were long.
Wow.
And, a lot of people go over. We were over at Blur Parties, the tailgate, which is underneath the bridge. And a lot of people go over there. And, of course, you got to cross 10th Street. It was packed over there. And then everybody at about 30 minutes before the game start coming across the street. Well, they got to block that street, both of them, so people can get across and don't get killed. And then they put everybody to the right with a rope so the cars could go in that parking garage. I remember them shutting that parking garage down in the past with like 60 minutes before the game, but it wasn't. And so because of that, they had to direct everyone into this little area, probably 8 or 10 wide of people. And then when you got around that corner to West Stadium, every single gate was backed up, probably 50, 60 deep. And I don't remember that before. I'm usually at the game earlier than that, so I have to remember that. But even with, I remember looking, 5 minutes passed, 5 minutes had gone in the first quarter. And I looked up in the North Stadium, and there were people still filing in. Just long lines of people just coming in because it was hard to get in. And from what I understand, from the people who tried to go to the concessions, the lines were extremely long at the concessions. So if you had a hard time getting in and a hard time getting food or drink, and it was 10-0 at half, it would have been a riot in that joint. It would have been like that. And Penn State ended up, pulling away slightly. They struggled. Wisconsin was in a battle with Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, it took them time to actually get some more points in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. Colorado, that game with Delaware was close with the Blue Hens.
Yeah, close in the first half, and then they kind of ran away
in
the second.
But, Nebraska fans didn't have to worry about that. Sure, you had a couple of mishaps early. You had the fumble at the goal line, and then you had, of course, try to do the tush push and not scoring. But, other than that, there was pretty good comfort at halftime. No one was worried about it. And then Nebraska piled on in the second half. So from here, you just go take care of business. This is what you're supposed to do. This is, in many ways, and I'm not sure people like the idea of this or not, but it's a developmental program. And as a developmental program, sure, you can bring in the portal guys, you can bring in the transfer guys, you can bring all those in. But essentially, you're building this team based off of how you're recruiting, who you can get in here, and then making them better through the weight room, through, the classroom, through, the practice field and all of that. Developmental program. So the first development was you went to a neutral site game, you played a Power 4 team, and you won. That was the first thing. Then you play against a team that you outman, and you do what you're supposed to do. You take advantage of them like you're supposed to do. You go in there and you beat the heck out of Akron. Next week, you play a bunch more players. By the way, they played 108 or 9.
Oh, wow.
I counted it twice, and I had 108 the first time, then 100. So I don't know. It's, not a lot of sleep. But either 108 or 109 players they played. So that's 22 starters and a bunch of bench people in that participation chart. The participation chart is a half a page on the font that I use. It's not a giant font, but it's a half page. It's a lot. So they took care of business. And then after you go through Houston Christian, who lost yesterday, but did cover, congratulations to their fans that bet on the game, then you get Michigan. And you play like a team that expects to contend in the Big Ten, whatever that means. Top 6, top 4, top 3, whatever. You play like that against Michigan. And if you do those 3 things, you get the bugaboo off your back for losing that opening game to a Power 4 team. You take care of business against outmatched FBS opponent and an FCS opponent. And then you go and you play well against Michigan. You do those things, that's what development's all about. And that's where Nebraska is. And I think a lot of you probably watched at least a little bit of that Oklahoma-Michigan game, and they showed a lot of highlights in the stadium as the game was going on because they had time. You saw an Oklahoma team that was flying around and made Michigan look slow. They really decimated Michigan's offensive line. There were a couple times where Michigan ran plays, zone read plays, where on the zone read, on the mesh, the defensive lineman or the linebacker was in the backfield enough to almost take the handoff. That's how much they were dominating. Other than one drive where Michigan broke a couple of tackles and had a couple of explosive plays, Oklahoma really dominated. They probably should have won that game by 21. But still, maybe that gives you more help with Michigan coming in. Here's what we got today. By the way, 951-1620, 402-951-1620. If you want to be a part of the show, we're going to do what went right. That is a long list. We'll do what went wrong. There's a few things. Even Matt Rule talked about those. We'll go back and look at the keys of the game, how Nebraska did with that. We got some stats. And we introduced to you a new segment on Severe Reaction. It's called BJWB. That is what it's called. Based on when Joey is here, we will do this. This is before Joey was born. Any stats that pop up that go back to before when you're born 1999?
Yes, 99.
1999. Matter of fact, the headline of the article from our guest, hopefully at 9 o'clock, Steve Sipple, was "Party Like It's 1999" for Husker fans after what happened yesterday. So, happened before Joey was born. Before Joey was born stats. We got a bunch of those. We're going to go over some of those. We'll get to that as well. Anytime when Joey's here and we have to throw something out that happened before 1999, you'll understand what the stat is all about.
Plenty of things that happened before I was born.
Especially when it comes to Nebraska, because
yes,
the golden era was before you were born.
Yes.
The silver era was before you were born, and the bronze era. All of those were before you were born.
Yeah, at least I was an infant on that 99 season. Just had that one loss.
What month?
June of 99.
Okay, so you're a little kid.
So, I was a little infant.
That was a great team at the end of the year. That 1999 team, if you were going to go through the history of college football and talk about why we need a playoff, whether it was 4 or it was 12 or 16 or whatever, you point to 1999, how good Nebraska was at the end of the year. Florida and Florida State played for the national championship. They'd already played each other earlier in the season. Mm-hmm. How unfair was that to, Florida and Florida State? You take care of business in the regular season and they go, oh, by the way, you got to play them again for the national championship. It's ridiculous.
It's now a more common thing with the playoff nowadays.
Yeah, and especially with when you have conference championship games, that happens. But to have that happen when you have a Nebraska team sitting there, and yes, Nebraska lost a very important game late in the season. Early in the season, they had a fumble by Eric Krause. They lost the game of Texas, and then they lost the Big 12 championship game. But all of that, at the end of the season, if that would have been a 14 playoff and, say, Florida State plays Nebraska and Florida plays whomever else, or if you had a 12 team, as well as Nebraska was playing at the end of 99, I went to that Fiesta Bowl when they beat the hell out of Tennessee. That's a great example of why we need those things. But so 1999, if it happened before then, before Joy was born. Of course, our sponsors for the show, Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. We appreciate Equitable Bank being a part of Severe Reaction. Also, Nebraska Medicine, brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into some of the remarkable numbers from that game yesterday. Also, take your phone calls, 402-951-1620. And we'll talk about things that, like I said, went right, which is a long, long list. We come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
Ball at the Akron 47, right to left in a scoreless game. Raiola under center, single back is Johnson. Takes a snap, turn right hand off, Johnson up the middle, burst to the second level. There he goes, 35-30. Your left number's 20, 15, 10, 5. He's in. Touchdown, Huskers. 47 yards.
You see the game within the game. They go deep set, downhill run game, 3D style. 2 + 1, that's 3. It's in your kitchen. Give me all 6 of them.
Sends Mills in motion left to right, takes the snap off a spin, handoff. Johnson has a lane, 30, 25, 20, accelerates to the 10, drags an offender inside the 5, down to the 2. Malcolm DeWalt with a touchdown saving tackle, a 37-yard romp. First and goal, Huskers, a Medica first down.
I thought Emmett was excellent there. One of the things I loved about what Emmett did tonight that I saw, I don't like to comment too much on the football until I watch the tape, but most times when he breaks out, he looks to cut it back. And tonight you saw him trust his long speed and make long runs. And to me, that's his training. And I think I said to you guys, like, hey, I see a different back during training camp. I think you saw a little bit of that tonight.
Well, you can tell everybody.
Welcome back. Severe Reaction here on 1620 The Zone. If you're like me, when you grew up, you loved the science fiction movies and all those. And Close Encounters, the Third Kind, was a great movie that came along. And if you remember, the one defining thing, our civilization, all of the civilizations, is math, right? Math is the one defining thing. Everywhere, every civilization is going to have math. I think they should take some of Damon's calls with the math and put them into a time capsule. So when the aliens come, we can go, here you go. Here you go. 2 + 1 is 3. Give me all 6 of them. There you go. That's all you got to do. He was having fun, man.
He was having a fun night.
He was having a
doing all the counting.
Yes.
Nebraska piled up all the points on Akron.
All of that. He was having a very good time with the additions. There's no doubt about that. Steve Sipple will join us after 9 o'clock today. I was a little worried maybe because they had a late post-game show. So this is what surprised me about Big Red Overreaction. When you score 68 points, there shouldn't be a lot of people calling and complaining. So
no, there shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be a lot of overreacting. So I was thinking, well, they won't be on very long. When I walked in my house and I went to the post-game, I did a little video after the game, drove home, obviously. There was still some traffic on the interstate. They were still going. When I walked into my house, they were still doing Big Red Overreaction.
Yeah, I didn't even check the time on when they started, but I know they have to go 2 hours.
Oh, they have to go 2 hours.
They have to go 2 hours.
Okay, so that makes sense. I thought they just had to get all of the sponsors in. I know they had to go a full 2 hours. Yeah. Okay, good. That makes sense why they were still on the air.
We'll do that and get the sponsors in.
And get all the sponsors in as well. Okay, cool. Good for them. And I know that, SIP is a part of the post-game show that even comes on later than Big Red Overreaction, of course, because they got to get all their stuff done with the post-game and go to the press conference and stuff. So anyway, he is awake, though, and he will join us at 8 o'clock. In the last 8 non-conference games that Nebraska has played, first of all, they've won them all, which is good. It is the last time, this is kind of a Joey stat, the last time they won 8 straight over a non-con opponent was from 1999 to 2001.
I'd like to hear that.
However, Joey was alive during that streak.
I was in my developmental state.
That's right. So thank you, Joey, for that streak. Also, in these 8 games, Nebraska's not given up 20 points. They've not given up 20 points in any of those games.
Wow.
Pretty good. The 68 points that Nebraska scored in the game, most since scoring against Idaho State, which was one of the worst opponents I've ever seen come in the building besides Bethune-Cookman. That was 2012. Took my son Miles to that game, and we were sitting up in the northwest corner where it's very shaded, and it was chilly. It was a September game, and it was chilly up there, kind of like it was last night. But they scored 73 points against Idaho State back in 2012. 728 yards, 8th highest in school history. Most since 2014 when they played FAU. Not bad. Nebraska had 494 yards passing. That, I think, out of all the stats from yesterday, if you would have asked me before the game to talk about what I projected, I think I would have thought Nebraska would run the ball more than they did. They were up by 50, and they were still throwing, which is fine. You got to work on you. You can't worry about if somebody else can stop you or whatever. You got to work on you. And so you're out there passing the ball. That's fine with me. Their job is to stop it. But almost 500 yards passing. Second highest in school history. Shout out to my friend Joe Gans. November 10th, 2007 versus Kansas State. Put up 519 yards. That's right. The 10th 400-yard passing game in program history. First since, 2018 against Wisconsin. Got to go back a little ways. And, of course, the shutout. If you listened to the press conference last night, you heard Matt Rule look over at Keith Mann to find out when the last shutout was. And Keith said, 2009.
The 300th consecutive sellout game against Louisiana. 55-0.
55-0. But the last shutout overall was in 2009. Holiday Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Holiday Bowl,
How did I forget
33-0. Nebraska's back, and we're here to stay. That game. That was Nick Foles, by the way, quarterbacking.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
For them. I either he was a freshman or a sophomore, I believe. I think he was a freshman. But Nebraska didn't allow anything in that game. 33-0 last time overall, the shutout. Also, Nebraska in the first half, in the last 4 games, Iowa, Boston College, Cincinnati, Akron. No first half touchdowns. Pretty good. Pretty good. And there's not a lot of rushing touchdown. Huh?
I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. And then remember that streak last year where Nebraska didn't allow any rushing touchdowns at home? That continues.
Well, another number Big Ten Network put out in yesterday's game, Dylan Raiola had 20 consecutive completed passes dating back to the Cincinnati game, which is a program record.
He completed his first 9 passes in the game.
Yep.
After completing his final 11 against Cincinnati, the 20 consecutive completions, Nebraska school record, beat Dave Hum. I want to talk about people before you were born.
Wow.
1974.
Wow.
And Dave had 15. So it wasn't even close. Blew it out with 20 consecutive completions. The Nebraska school record over Dave Hum. You mentioned Dylan, great day, 24 of 31, 364 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. It looked easy. I mean, there was a little early on where, kind of missed a little throw but other than that, I mean, I don't know what you can find that was a problem. He had 297 against Illinois last year, one of his best games he's ever had. Most passing yards since Adrian Martinez. That 2018 Wisconsin game, the 384 yards, the game that, you look back at that game, Nebraska had every chance to win that game, but 384 yards from Adrian Martinez in that game against Wisconsin, going back to 2018. Last time a quarterback for Nebraska do 4 touchdown passes. You know what this is? 2015.
Wow.
You know who they played against?
I
will give you the team. It was Purdue. Do you know the quarterback that threw 4 touchdown passes? In what was one of the ugliest games Nebraska has ever played, I believe it was Darrell Hazel's only win.
Well, 2015, that would be Tommy Armstrong would be the quarterback.
He was out for that game.
Okay.
And our friend from Grand Island, Riker Fife.
Yeah.
Threw 4 touchdown passes in that game, which was a crazy game. So now Raiola has over 3,400 passing yards in his career. Obviously, if he stays all 4 years at this pace, he's going to break every passing record.
He's going to break everything.
He'll come close if he stays 3. I mean, he'll stay 3, obviously. Well, hopefully. What you have to have, we'll take a break. Before we take a break, coming up, you got to have goals when you're going into a game against Akron, right? I mentioned the developmental things you have to get. We're going to go over some of the goals were going into this game and why they were important to get to, which ones they got to, which were pretty much all of them. We'll do that. You can always call 402-951-1620. Reminder, Stephen M. Sipple after 9 o'clock. Talk about the game as well. And thank you to Equitable Bank. This Severe Reaction is brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. And Nebraska Medicine. Join Nebraska Medicine's team. Go to nebraskamed.com/careers to join today. More Severe Reaction when we come back here on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
Goal from the 4. Late subs now run out for Akron. They had the chance to sub because Nebraska's sub. 2 receivers left, Hunter wide left, Barney slot left, 2 tight ends right. Raiola from the 4 takes the shotgun snap. Looks right, swings it right, wide open at the 5. EJ's in for a second touchdown of the night. This one through the air, a little 4-yard swing route to the right side. And the Huskers tack on. They lead 18-0. 2 receivers stack left. Hunter wide right, make that Barney wide right. Harburg in motion left to right. Snap to Raiola, back to pass. Looks left, surveys under pressure, rolls right, flips one right side of the end zone. Caught! Dane Key crossing the back line of the end zone. Gets a foot in for a Husker touchdown. Key unlocks 6. 46-0 here in the third.
I told the TV guys before the game, I said, yeah, Dylan's done a good job of blocking out the noise. A lot of guys were talking about his performance last week. He completed he was one of the only quarterbacks in the country. He completed 33 passes last week. He completed his last 9 last week and first 11 this week, or vice versa. Last 11 last week and first 9 this week. I think he was superb last week. I thought early on, to be quite honest, his feet were a little bit out of whack. I thought Data did a good job of getting him in phase, and I thought he was in command. Anytime we can throw the ball this many times and not have to worry about throwing it in interceptions, I think we feel really good about it.
Somebody once told me the world.
Welcome back to a reaction here on 1620 The Zone. Michael Severe and Joey, the producer. I apologize for a brain fart. And as I was saying it, I was like, this isn't right. As I was saying it, because I was like, wait a minute, Florida. So that was 96. Rematch of Florida State. Florida wins the national championship. 99, Florida State. Thank you, Chris, for reminding me. Thank you. 99, of course, is that brutal game, Florida State and Virginia Tech. So either way, I still argue if you have a playoff, 96, after Nebraska had lost in the Big 12 championship game, or 99, the way they played at the end of the season against Tennessee in the bowl game, I would say that Nebraska would have had a good chance at another or maybe two national championships. But, that's the past. 402-951-1620. Let's go to the phones. Scott is joining us this morning. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you, Michael?
I think I'm tired, I think.
I am too. Yeah. I love the night games, but everybody hits the road at the same time. But what a great night. Michael, it was nice to see us do what we should do against a team like that. Actually, in my opinion, Vegas is pretty smart. You could make a good case that Nebraska outperformed yesterday, but it's good to see because we haven't seen that a lot historically. We've beaten teams like that we should, but we haven't done it in the way that we should have or could have. So really encouraged by that. Michael, one of your strengths, I think, is you look at things that other people aren't looking for. I'm probably like the average fan. I'm looking at where the ball is and the result. I know you're a trench guy. Even against an opponent like that, would you talk about the O-line a little bit and
Sure.
how you would grade them out so far, and also the second level of O-line and the depth there? So I'd just love to hear your thoughts. Appreciate you, brother. Have a great weekend.
No problem, Scott. Thank you a lot. If you want to, now I'm not telling you this is how you have to watch the game, but there's a great book that's called Take Your Eyes Off the Ball. I think Pat Kerwin is the author of it, and it is a great description of what to watch. Everything from who comes in off the sideline, the formation before the play, both offensively and defensively. Are they in too high, or are they in man free, or are they playing press, or do you like it's maybe the middle linebacker is going to bail, or the weak side linebacker is going to bail? Watching the offensive formation, or are they in 21 personnel and in 22 personnel, whatever. And he talks a lot about that. And then again, not necessarily watching where the ball goes all the time, watching development. And that's what I try to do. I always have my binoculars on the offensive and defensive line, and I watch and see what that happens on the initial snap. And then I kind of look and see what's happening with the quarterback and the ball. But I always try to watch that first. One of the interesting things that happened last night was there was not a three-man rotation at left tackle. Gunnar Gatula started. Turner Corker came in for a little while. Then Turner started coming in as number 89 to have some unbalanced line. So he came in with a tight end number, so he didn't have to check in every time he came in to be in a place where he could actually catch a pass or go downfield. That was really interesting that they did that. Pritchard didn't come in until much later when the game was over. He did have a couple of really nice blocks where he collapsed inside. I thought he played really well. I thought Teddy played really well based off of what I saw. I haven't seen the grades from PFF. Watching that offensive line, defensive line matchup, it was just a mismatch. Spindler looked like he dominated for the most part watching him. I watched a lot of Gunnar Gatula to see how he did. I thought he played pretty well. They had one pass rusher who was pretty decent, who had a nice speed rush, but, they didn't have a lot more than that. They have a really good linebacker who I'm surprised is still there. He's in his 6th year, but he's been other places. They just don't have a ton of talent to challenge Nebraska's offensive linemen. Now, it was fun kind of watching the young guys come in, and I don't really believe there was a drop-off. I didn't see a drop-off from the second team or even the third team offensive line. Now, I'm going to go back and watch the game. I watched basically all of the highlights last night, all the big plays. I think there were 33 of them total on YouTube TV. I went back and watched all those, but I'll go back and watch the whole game, and I'll concentrate mostly on the offensive line and see how some of those backups did. But I didn't see a drop-off. I thought TJ Lateef came in against, not a great team, but showed his athleticism. That little stinky leg he gave, cut back, that was the whole crowd. Whoever was left was very happy they were there to see that. That was a hell of a play by him. But when he came in, the offensive line held up, played well. They opened a bunch of rushing holes. How about Heinrich Harburg and his blocking, man? We got to give him a lot of credit for moving over to tight end. And the question was, well, can he block? He blocked wonderfully. They had one of the biggest blocks of the game on that 47-yard touchdown run. Let's go back to the phones, 402-951-1620. That's where Andrew is. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Severe?
Drew, what's happening?
Nothing much. Hey, so if you were the coach, what would you take away from the game? And do you think Latif could be? He did throw down a mean stinky leg, but do you see him in maybe some packages going forward?
I think if they did that, it would be Heinrich that they would put into that package. I don't know. I see what you're saying. But when you have a quarterback who is playing as well as Dylan is, I don't know if you ever want to take him off the field for any package. You know, I almost want to always keep him on the field. But I understand what you're saying. If there's opportunities to get him in where you need, like maybe you want to run a quarterback sweep or something like that because it's 3rd and 2, and I could see that because he has that ability. But I just don't think that's something they're gonna try to do. The only way he plays blowouts, or if God forbid something would happen to Dylan, he would come in. But I understand what you're saying. He's got some really good running skills.
Yeah, I was wondering is there? They were way overmatched.
Yeah.
So can you take much away from this game, or do you just?
I think you can. What I talked about earlier in the show is you're a developmental program. And so there's these steps you have to go through. You got to win that game over the Power 4 team to start the season you hadn't done. Then you have to go out and perform like you're supposed to against a team you're supposed to beat. And then next week, don't go in there all, I know this is an FCS team and don't come in motivated. Go out there and you beat the heck out of them in the first half and get all your backups in again. It's developmental, And so, yeah, I take away exactly what Matt Rule said. It was a win. We played really well. Now we move on.
Who also looked pretty good, granted it was one play. Do you see Clark getting some more time at receiver? I think so. I think that I'm going to go over it later, some of the things you needed to get done in goals. But one of the goals was to find the receivers that are after the big three. And he's an incredibly athletic kid, track and field, basketball, football, obviously good lineage with his dad. Yeah, I would love to see him get more opportunities. And that Saturday practice we went to, he looked incredible. So I would love to see him get more. I hope he does. All right. Thanks for the great information, my man.
All right, Drew. Thanks, man. Have a great rest of your weekend. Let's go back to the phones before we take a break. We'll go to Bill. Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good, Michael. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, man.
All right. Game was good. They did all right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The new concessions in the stadium.
I know. I heard.
Oh, my God. Horrible. I don't even think there was anybody walking around selling anything.
They weren't. Hey, Bill, what time did you get to the stadium to go in?
I think what is it, 6? I think we walked in at 6 o'clock.
Okay, how was the lines to get in?
Not the greatest.
Yeah.
But then we got in the beer line right away, and that took about 15 minutes. Then we went to go get concessions, and I bet you it took. We left at halftime because my son was hungry, and we're just gonna go out back to the parking lot and eat out there.
Yeah.
Watch it on TV. But I heard places ran out. The guy next to me said they ran out. They had to bring more food back over.
Yeah, I heard they ran out of Runzas and pizza, both, I heard.
Big fail on the new vendor.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to give excuses. Obviously, it's the first game, but you've got to overperform in that first game. You have to.
Why weren't they walking around selling in the stands?
I don't believe they're doing that anymore. That's what I'd read, that they weren't doing that anymore. It's just going to be at the actual concession stands. They didn't even have drinks coming through, like sodas and stuff.
Nothing. I didn't see anything. And we're in the south end zone.
Yeah.
About 8 rows up, and I didn't see anything come through. So I guess in the future, I'll just stuff myself before I go in.
Well, and give them a chance. Maybe they can figure. The problem with that place is it's old, and
yes,
you have limited space,
and
it's just an old place, and it's hard to be able to set up. I always tell people, if you're thinking about buying tickets, the East Stadium, the expansion, that's the place to be, because there's room. You got your own bathrooms, your own concession stands back there. That's the place. Everywhere else is just jam-packed, especially where you are, man. I can't even imagine how bad South Stadium
I got
is.
free tickets from a buddy, and I took my son, and he loved it, but he's like, Dad, I'm hungry. I'm like, we walked down there. I was like, no. We ain't going to get back to our seats until the fourth quarter.
I think that might be one of the big stories coming out. Besides what Nebraska did 68-0, it's getting into the stadium and then getting food from the concession stands. I think that'll be a big story this week.
Correct. All right. Have a good day.
You too, Bill. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Brought to you by Severe Reaction is that seemed like Yoda. Brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking personally, and Nebraska Medicine. Nebraska Medicine. Join our team today, nebraskamed.com/careers. When we come back, some of the goals Nebraska had, at least in my opinion, going into the game and how they accomplished those goals and what we got from all of those, including special teams, baby. Special teams, what I love maybe more than anything else besides a screenplay. We come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
Joseph Castle had a 68-yard punt last week. He's about as deep as you can get in your own end zone. Snap back to him, one step forward, an end-over-end punt back deep as Barney at the 40 between the hash marks. At the Husker 35 to the 30, just to the 25, tripped up along the hash marks to the 21-yard line. Elijah Reed on the tackle, 37-yard punt, 19 yards on the return. You don't get much better field position than this. Snap back. Roll out to the right, Johnson. That's a much better punt than what we saw from Joseph Castle last time. Collected far left numbers at the 9. Circling back to the 5, Barney. Has acres of space, 20. Left side, 25, 30. At the 40. Left sideline, 45. Steps out of bounds just shy of midfield. Ushered out by the punter, Braden Johnson. Near the 48 of the Huskers. 47-yard punt and a 41-yard return.
Excellent to see Jacory, the job he and his punt return unit did. Having 87 yards. I think Keith was just telling me it's more than the season total the last couple of years. We knew we were going to have good opportunity at that, but it's all these things mixed together, right? It's the defense. It's the defense, having good field position so that we can be aggressive on the punt returns. It's guys holding guys up. Having guys like Derek Branch and Vince Genatone who do great jobs on those teams. Young guys like Kamir Prescott who step up. So really proud of all that.
Welcome back to the reaction here on 1620 The Zone, 402-951-1620. Producer Joey monitoring the phones. You can always call. We will talk to Stephen M. Sipple after 9 o'clock this morning, get his take on what happened last night. 87 return yards, specifically for Jacory Barney in the punt game. That is the most by a player since 2019. when J.D. Spielman had 80, and a big part of that was a return punt for a touchdown. Over the last 4 years, they had a year where they had 19 total yards of return, another year where there was 37 total yards for returns, 63. So getting 87 from one guy is pretty good. And I know it's, again, we're always going to say it's Akron, but they played a lot of teams like Akron, or at least a few teams like Akron, and still haven't been able to have good punt returns, and they did. They had several good punt returns, blocked field goal. Riley Van Poppel, nice job by that. Did a pretty good job on all those. They kicked the ball off, 10 times? 11 times? I don't know, a lot of times. And
I think 9 times Nebraska did.
Kicked off 9 times?
Yeah, because 63, and then the safety and field. No, 10 times. 10 times.
10 times, right. So 10 times. And I think the longest return I remember might have been 24 yards. I have to look that up and see, but I think that was the longest one I remember. So, you give somebody that many opportunities to return kicks, you would think maybe they're going to break one, but they did not. And so everything we talked about, the longest one was 22. No, take it back, 33. There it is. B. Hills had a 33-yard kickoff return, and that was the longest one. So you give that many opportunities. They returned 6 total, and I believe there were 10 total kicked off. So, yeah, you got to like what happened with special teams. The one complaint, again, that you're going to hear from people as this week goes along is about concessions and getting in the stadium. But I have to say over and over again, this is the first game, and it's the first game for everybody, right? So even the fans, not necessarily having the phone ready, making sure that the ticket is ready to go, you have your illumination turned up enough, everything's ready to go. Even the fans aren't quite ready. Now, if it's true that they don't have the hawkers anymore, I don't get that. I mean, I read some stuff saying that they weren't going to have outside sales, like those groups that come in and do that sort of thing. They're not going to do that anymore. But see, Gray Woman 79 says, why would they get rid of the hawkers selling food in the stands and think they could keep up with the demand? First time they start selling beer in the stadium, that is dumb. Yeah, well, I don't know why they would do that either. Rule of the day says, feels great to have one thing to complain about. It's very true. Husker fans will always find something. Yeah, it's true. But the person that's most disappointed in this, I guarantee you, because fans is Dannon. Troy Dannon, the athletic director, he understands better than anybody that you have to have comfort in the stadium nowadays. You have to fight against people staying in their basement, going to a sports bar, going to a Husker party. You got to fight against that. And so, they upgraded the Verizon signal supposedly in there, and they upgraded the same video board, but all upgraded with new stuff in the inside of it. They want to make sure that the things like the light show after the third quarter are there for the night games. But more than anything else, when you're in your seat, you can get the internet, you can quickly go get some food, and I say quickly, get to a bathroom and get back to your seat. That's what they want to see happen. And that's why so many places are redoing their stadiums. So, especially in the NFL, where you have a plug-in for your phone on your seat, being able to order something from your seat and having people bring it to you there. They're trying to keep people in their seats and make them as comfortable as possible. I guarantee you that when Troy Dannon, I'm sure he heard about it last night, when he hears about it, he's pissed, because that has to be fixed. That has to work well if Nebraska is going to continue. I did 86,000 last night.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to continue to have 86,000 in that place? And by the way, it's going to go down. With the work that's going to happen, they're going to reduce the seat capacity, which is fine, because they'll have wider places for people to seat. They'll put in actual seat backs, and so all that'll happen. But because of that, you have to make sure that you cater to these people, and you can't have nights where you can't get in the stadium, where it's 6:50, and I still see lines of people trying to get in because they were out there standing in line, not because they came late. It was hard to get into the stadium. And the same thing happened in Kansas City. And that had nothing to do with Nebraska Memorial Stadium. I heard a bunch of people complaining about trying to get in and standing in lines in Kansas City too. So, but first game of the year, give them a break. First game of the year with the new concessions, with R-Mark and all that, give them a break. Give them a chance. See what happens. Some of the goals heading into last night. We talked about this in the the pregame show, 1620, the pregame show with John and I from Blur Party outside across from the stadium, their tailgate. 108 players. You want to get people in, 108 players on the chart. Pretty much everyone who wasn't hurt got in the game. We mentioned you want to get some work for the backup running backs. Now, it happened quicker than probably they wanted to because Emmett has the fumble and Matt Rule has the rule. I'm not going to put you just right back in there after you fumble. And it was helmet around the ball. You can say whatever you want. I think that's only his third fumble of his career that I remember. You can put the ball away. You can secure the heck out of it. There are certain times where a guy puts a helmet on the ball correctly and it's going to come out. And before he could get his hand over the ball ahead to the goal line, he hits it in there. So because of that, you saw the backup running backs came in. Ives got in there earlier than you thought maybe he would. Between the three main backups, Ives, Nelson, and Mosey, they had 16 total touches for 169 yards. Mosey didn't have a rush, but I think you saw in the 3 catches he had what they talk about from practice. He's dynamic. Makes guys miss. He can break tackles. He's bigger than you think he is. That run on West Stadium side where he's going on the sideline, he's a physical kid. He really is. And then Ives, of course, had the 28-yard touchdown run. Nelson had a touchdown from 1 yard out. So you got your backup running backs in there. You got them some experience. At the same time, you still got 16 touches for Emmett, 14 rushes and 2 catches, and he had a big game. Maybe his best game of his career. The other thing we talked about was finding havoc, right? You want havoc from your defensive front. And when we talk about the defensive front, we're talking about the 3 down linemen, when there are 3 down linemen, and either your hanger, your 2 guys that are standing up, however you want to do that 5-man front. Sometimes it can be 6. But the 5-man front, how much havoc do you get from them? Nebraska finally broke the sackless streak. They got 2 sacks last night. They were late in the game, but they didn't allow a 4th down conversion until the 4th quarter. And I believe only 1 total in the game for Akron. Combining tackle for loss, sack, hurries, pass breakups, and then if they had an interception or a forced fumble, Nebraska had 19 havoc plays. Last week, they had 10. That was it. And no sacks and only like 1 or 2 tackle for loss. They only allowed 175 yards, 3.1 yards a rush, and Akron completed just 39% of their passes. 13 first downs total for Akron. That's it, 13. And 30 for Nebraska. It was dominant, man. K-Pat Chop looked great. 24 snaps, second most among the defensive line based off of PFF that I found there on 3. Thanks to them for posting the defensive numbers. He had 4 tackles and 3 stop tackles, right there at either a loss or for no gain. He also had the safety, and he had a quarterback hurry. I thought his grade was going to be higher than it was. I was actually a little surprised that the grade they had for him wasn't like in the 70s. That's where I thought it would be. Cade's, it was 62.8, but his tackling grade was 75, which was the highest among any of the defensive linemen. And they played a ton of them. And so, that's good that true freshman can get in there from West Fargo, North Dakota, get in there and make some plays. Gabe Moore got in there. He played and had the highest grade among defensive line at 72.1. And Williams Nwaneri was the defensive lineman with the most snaps, 26 snaps. So they got that done. And then the last one really was, you've got Hunter, you've got Barney, you've got Key. You have to find people after them because you can't just go with 3. And I think we saw that. We saw the athleticism of Quinn Clark. We saw Keelan Smith make a nice catch. Mills had 1 catch. I think he's got a heck of a career ahead of him. You can throw Lindenmeyer in there, who had probably the biggest night of anybody. He had a one-handed catch. He had his first touchdown, and he got engaged. That is a night that he will never forget. His fiance will never forget. That's just amazing. And as Coach Rule said, if she wasn't going to say yes tonight, after all of that, you were never going to get her to say yes. Harburg, I mentioned the great blocking that he had. Came over on that long run by Emmett for 47 yards. He played really well. I think they have enough guys. Now, Barney played lights out, had 1 play where he kind of stumbled and another play where I thought maybe he could have gotten to the edge, but if you combine what he did as a punt returner and what he did as a wide receiver, man, what a night he had. And then Hunter, every time the ball gets there were 0 drops, by the way. You want another highlight? 0 drops in the game for Nebraska.
Gotta love to hear that.
You gotta love that. No interceptions and 0 drops. That's as close to a perfect night as you can get. You don't have to go 33 for 33 to have a perfect night. You can have some incompletions, but if you don't have any drops and you don't have any interceptions, that's a pretty good night. And that's what they had. 14 different Huskers caught a pass. And Barney had 132 yards with 7 grabs, and Quinn Clark had his first touchdown, and Luke Lindenmeyer had his first career touchdown as well. And the last thing before we take a break and come back with Stephen M. Sipple, Kyle Cunanan was busy. Not only did he have the field goal, the 9 extra points, but he ended up doing most of the kickoffs because there was a kickoff out of bounds. They brought him back in to kick off again. So he was busy, man. He's icing down that leg. In a game that you don't think about the field goal kicker much because he only had the 1 field goal, but all of those extra points, all of those kickoffs, good job by Kyle Cunanan. When we come back, we'll talk to Sip. Of course, Severe Reaction brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking seriously and answer the phone on the first ring, and brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. Sip's next here on Severe Reaction.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
3 receivers wide side left. That's Hunter, Key, and Barney. Lindenmeyer, tight end right. Ball at the 10 right hash. Low snap to Raiola. 2-step drop. Looks left. Angles out left, rolling, throwing, caught Lindenmeyer at the 4 and in for a Husker touchdown. First career receiving touchdown for Luke Lindenmeyer. And the route is on here at Memorial Stadium.
He had asked ahead of time I mean, not asked, like, hey, do you care if I do this after the game? He didn't ask for my permission. I think he probably asked her dad that. Yeah, so I mean, that was really, really important for me. I didn't want to think about that. I wanted to think about the game. But once the game was in hand, I think it was really important for me that his teammates were there. Like, Luke's a devout Christian, and he's someone who's openly shares his faith, and he's someone who rallies teammates of all ages and all places and all ethnicities and diversity. I mean, he just is there for everybody, and he's behind them all. So just to see the joy on everyone's face, to see him, I thought that was really, really cool. Happy for Luke Lindemeyer. At the very end, he proposed to his girlfriend, who I'm so embarrassed I don't know her name, but she's a lovely young lady, and she's a Scarlet, and he proposed, and she said yes. So excited for him.
Welcome back to Sphere Reaction, hour number 2. Congratulations to Luke Lindemeyer, who had a hell of a day. First career touchdown, a one-handed catch, got engaged. All I can say about that, though, is, man, you can wait. Go live a life. I didn't get married till I was 34. Sometimes it's a good idea to go get married early. Not in my opinion, but, good job by Luke Lindemeyer. Congratulations to his soon-to-be wife. Joining us from Husker Online and the On3 Network is the columnist and podcaster, Stephen M. Sipple. Good morning, Sip.
Good morning, Michael.
How old were you when you first got married, Sip? The first time?
I was older. I was like your age.
Yeah. That's the
when you got married.
Yeah, 34.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes
about almost right there.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to go out and live your life first, but that's just me. Sip. So there were 3 things that I thought Nebraska needed to work on in a game against a team like Oregon. Which one do you think they did the best? Get the defensive line. Let's getting some havoc plays and seeing some stuff from them. Working in those backup running backs and finding your depth at wide receiver. Which one of those 3 you think they accomplished the best?
I'd say I'd start with the defensive line, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of rotation. Seen Cade Petchak, I guess is how you pronounce it. What he did early was the most eye-popping thing in that group. Getting him in early, which shows intent. For him to be part of the picture. Seeing what it would look like, and then seeing, he has a level of explosion that it's hard, it's hard to ignore, right? So I don't know, I guess it was that. I thought it was really important to see explosive play, so that speaks to the receivers group. The last I checked, they had 8 plays over 20 plus.
Yeah.
So that was good. That's just in the passing game. There's also at least a handful of runs that were over 15 plus. So, but I'd say, we're always going to be watching, this season, we're going to be watching that defensive line pretty closely. And I thought it was pretty good last night.
Yeah, I did too. I know sacks aren't, and I'm not a sack guy. I believe you affect the pass rusher. Hurries, pressures are as almost important as any of them. But they had 2 sacks, but they were late. They had some pressures, but it wasn't as many as I would expect against a team like Akron. Besides Cade, was there another guy on that defensive line that stood out to you?
No, not that really stood out. I thought they generally played okay.
Yeah.
But no, it was mainly that. But come on. The thing that we got to be careful of, I think, is continuing to point out their vulnerability. They just shut out a team.
Oh yeah,
funny. They just shut out a team, and they only allowed 17 points in the opener. So I have to catch myself a little bit. They allowed 17 points in the opener, 271 yards. Yeah, there was 6.7 per carry. The quarterback got loose in the opener. That wasn't happening in this game. So, I don't want to go too far down that road every week of picking apart what they're doing when they're putting up those kinds of numbers.
Sip joining us here on Severe Reaction, of course, from Husker Online. And I get what you're saying. It's just that, we're not thinking about Akron and we're not thinking about Houston Christian. when we say those things, we're thinking about, Michigan and USC and those games. Can they do enough in those games based off what we've seen so far? And listen, I love the depth at wide receiver. It's so nice. And I know you love big receivers, so I'm sure you were happy to see Quinn Clark out there and Keelan Smith out there and those big receivers. But you look at what's happening on a defensive line, and I just wonder when they line up and the other team is saying, I'm going to run the ball at you, how they can handle it. And I just don't know yet.
We don't know. I mean, we really don't. You had a sample against Cincinnati, but it was a little bit skewed because of the QB and the way he would take off. And John Butler famously described it. John Butler, defensive coordinator, said looked at him like the quarterback would drop back, couldn't read our coverage, and just said, "Okay, I'm going to take off."
Yeah, high school.
No, I mean we're not going to know how Michigan, because Michigan will just line up and try to test you. I don't know. I mean, I was encouraged last night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraged. I mean, I know it's a tough group. That story about Cam Lenhart that Matt Rule told after the game indicates high degree of toughness and want to, right?
Yep.
Where he had to fast because of a surgery, practiced anyway, then had hand surgery, then practiced the next day. I mean, there's a lot there. Keelan Davis, is going to be a warrior. Looks like Pet Shack's good. Van Poppel's going to be there every week. So I think it'd be unfair to rule out that they can hold down some good running teams. I'm not going to rule it out right now.
Out of all of the first times in a long time, out of all of those things, Nebraska in 2021 had 27 punt return yards. In 2022, they had 77 punt return yards. In 2023, they had 48. And then last year, they had a miserable last in the Big Ten, 73. The fact that one guy had 87 last night, I know it's Akron, but man, that's got to make people feel better about the special teams overall in the return game.
Yeah, a lot of these conversations this week about the Akron game, I'll sound like a broken record because I kind of look at that question as a microcosm of the entire picture. What I liked about last night in general manifested itself in the special teams in the return game, and that was aggressiveness. They're aggressive. Nebraska was aggressive last night. It was aggressive. They had an aggressive approach to everything, and pretty much everything. Right? I mean, they cut loose on offense. The defense was generally aggressive, and Eckler asked those guys to cut loose. He wants Barney to return punts. That guy was obvious in the opener when there wasn't a lot of room. Last night there was a lot of room.
Yeah.
And he got upfield. He looked good doing it. There's a level of aggression. When you ask guys like Corey Barney to cut loose, it looks good because he's really fast and he's tough and he's talented. He's a natural with the ball in his hand. So that's what you do. Aggressiveness. What am I talking about? I think there's a 12-yard punt. And Barney got to the ball.
Yeah, he did.
He went, and I guess almost looked like he had designs on picking it up and going. That's what I mean. That's aggressiveness. That's what Eckler's instilled, and Matt Rule's instilled. So that's, take out all the numbers we can, all those numbers were impressive last night, 728 yards, 68 points, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But what I liked was the intensity and the overall aggressiveness. They were intense out of the gate, and they really stayed intense till the end.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that Rule pointed out in the press conference was that he was disappointed that late in the first half that they got a little drive. They got a drive early in the second half because when you're that good, a coach is always going to find stuff to be critical. So at least he's got a couple things to talk about during the week before they play a game against Houston Christian that I think it'll be hard to get guys up for, but I'm sure he'll do his best.
Yeah, I think you just tell them, "Oh, listen to this. I'm a coach now."
Yeah,
you just think, let's just duplicate what we just did, or take it to another level. The night game helps. I knew it would help.
Yeah,
it always does. So I wasn't really worried about a letdown against Akron. And plus, there was so much consternation.
Sure.
In the fan base after the Cincinnati game that I didn't think this team would get big-headed. It'll be more of a challenge this week because they're hearing people like us really talk them up. This will be a bigger challenge than its 11 a.m. kickoff. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I would think it would be easy to take another step forward knowing that Michigan's next.
Yes.
But you just never know.
The good news is the thunderstorms have moved to later in the evening next Saturday. Originally, they were earlier in the day, so hopefully we avoid that. That would be good.
That'd be
in your post game show last night. Were people complaining at all about getting in the stadium or the concessions? That seems to be kind of the one thing that people were upset about game one. The new concessions not necessarily being easy to get to.
I heard about long lines.
Yeah,
talk about, and I guess that's all I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect it. I mean, I just don't. I think when you change vendors, and it's the first time, it's there's massive changes over there in that arena, and I would have been surprised if people would have reported back, oh, it went totally smooth, just like always. I would have been very skeptical of that.
Yeah, and a big part of it too, and I got there 3 hours before the game because I was doing a pregame show, and the parking lot that I was in, lot 9, I had to go to the top floor to park. It was full. So you had all those people in there tailgating early. You had, I bet you, people staying out later in terms of tailgating and thought they could get in the last 20 minutes, at like 10 minutes to 6:30. And that's probably the problem was, for people getting in. And then once they got in, everybody tries to go get their food. So that probably compounded it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges that they'll probably have to work through. But again, changing vendor, selling beer for the first time, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have expected it to be. I would have expected there to be hitches.
Sip, your thoughts on the way Heinrich Harburg is taken to blocking, because that was one of the questions about him, wide receiver size or maybe former quarterback, but he blocked his ass off last night, and he did week 1 as well.
Yeah, he did. Not surprised just knowing. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that conversation, right, Michael? I mean, a lot of it's 1-2, and Heinrich Harburg, if you think back to his days as a quarterback.
Yep.
Remember how he went into contact?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was a forceful runner. He has a lot on the line. He wants to be a professional, right? And all of this learning and all this transition has to occur very quickly. And he's a high level athlete. So I guess I'm not terribly surprised, except that I respect the challenge of such an adjustment. So you don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about this adjustment, you always would think about it in the context of him catching passes down the field. You knew that would look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you probably had a pretty good idea because he's such a great athlete. The blocking part of it, I don't know. You don't know. It's tough. You watch it so much football. I mean, one thing I really respect is those guys. The guys, I guess, just in the trenches, for lack of a better term. It's such a fist fight in there in certain leagues, and the Big Ten's one of them. I mean, it's a brawl.
Yep.
And it is. It's a brawl every play. I can't even believe what I see sometimes. So, yeah, he adjusted to that. I thought Carter Nelson threw a nice block last night too.
He did.
Credit. Yeah, he did. Credit to Satterfield. You're watching this. We always talk about how coaches develop. Well, I think we're seeing a great example of it. And you know what? So we're seeing a great example with Lindenmeyer. We always say, where's the development? Where's the development? Well, look at number 44. I mean, he is developed in that program. You have to give the coaches a lot of credit.
Yeah, and then also another one is, what Raiola's doing with the offensive line. And I always kind of like going back and look at these PF scores based off of what I thought I saw, just watching it through the binoculars. And what'd you think about what they did with Turner Corcoran, bringing him in as the extra offensive lineman in a tight end jersey number so he could be eligible? And then what they did at left tackle, where Pritchard didn't play until really the end of the game when it was out of hand.
Yeah, he got in Pritchett got in the third quarter. As far as that jumbo set, I liked it. It worked really well.
Yep.
At least one time where there was just a gaping space for number 21. I think all of that makes sense. It all falls in line with what Rule wants in a football team. He does want to run it. He does want to be very physical. He likes line play. He's a defensive line coach. He wants. This is what he wants. It's his. If you just think of it in terms of the coach's vision, his overall vision of what he wants it to look like, doing that with Turner Corcoran makes perfect sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. You have all of that mass on the left side in this case, and you wonder what do you do there? Why do you do it? Well, that one play told you why. It worked. So, and you know what? They feel good about a lot of those lines. It's a way to get Corcoran it's a way to get another one on the field.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love unbalanced line. What's your feelings on left tackle? What do you think is going to happen? Gunner got most of the snaps. What do you think going forward?
It seems like, you have to say, wouldn't you have to say that Gunner probably has established himself now?
Yeah,
to a large degree. It's ongoing. That's the thing. Now you don't want to stamp anybody because there's three pretty good players there. But Gunner's got 2 starts in a row. He was the guy last night. Pritchett came in the third quarter. I would say Gunner has the upper hand. I just don't think you can get Pritchett graded the best the first game. So, but that's good for Gunner. It looks like he has the upper hand right now. He does everything right. That's what he does. I give him a ton of credit for last year when he played with a shoulder injury.
Yeah, and the toughness of those guys. The story about Cam Leonard, as you mentioned, and all of that. Those guys are going out there. We never talk about how physical that game is and how many injuries they have and how they play through being hurt. It's just remarkable. And I try to remind people that all the time. They're having to go to class and they're going to limp around the class and get treatment and everything. It's a tough job being a college football player.
It really is. And I think I'm glad you said that. The reason I like covering the sport is because and this goes for most sports, but there's just some you can say it with at a higher level than others. And that is, they're just doing stuff most people can't do. And that includes what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Play a football game, have pretty significant aches and pains or just flat out injuries and still living, still have to do everything we do. It's not, and I just admire what you just said. And I totally agree with that.
Sip, we appreciate it. What time did you get to bed last night?
Oh God, it was late, like 2.
That's early, Sip. Not late. That's early. Early in the morning. Man, we appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
The night games are a challenge. Let's say that.
They're more of a challenge now when we're in our mid to late 50s than when we were in our 30s. I can guarantee you that.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right, Sip, man, I appreciate it as always, and it's gonna be a big week getting ready for Houston Christian. I can't wait.
No, you stay up for this, okay?
I will do my best.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Sip. We appreciate it. Stephen M. Sipple, HuskerOnline.com. Tony brings up the drop because StatCaster didn't list any drops, but PFF does list that pass to the corner that Barney goes for and doesn't catch it. They listed it as a drop. So on the NCAA page, I didn't see a drop, but on PFF, yes. So we come back. Jim, stay right there. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get Jim and your phone calls, 402-951-1620 here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
37 of Akron, snap from under center, Raiola. Off a play fake, deep drop, slings it over the middle, and an end cut between the hash marks. 10-5, touchdown, Quinn Clark. Caught it over the middle. He took it to the house. Fireworks Blair. All Huskers here in the first half.
Such a good athlete. Comes from good stock. His dad has got a couple of touchdowns on this football field. Boy, would he be proud from the heavens. He's got the best seat in the house.
Quinn, for me, I think that's a special Husker moment there. Obviously, his father, great player here, passed away. I'll never forget when we offered him. Coop and I were in the end zone at a camp, and he just kept running around. I was like, Vershawn and Damon and a bunch of guys that kept sending me his tape. And I said, we'll get him to camp. He came to camp, and he's running around, this big athlete. I remember walking up finally and being like, we were in Memorial. We were in the north end of Memorial. I said, well, where's your mom? He said, she's right there. Ironically enough, she was standing there. I said, walk over here. And we offered him a scholarship in the end zone at Memorial Stadium. And, just think about, his father not being there, but probably looking down on him in a place that meant a lot to him. And so, he scored that touchdown. Me, like, I'm the most, like, non-celebrant. I yelled at Dane, like, go get that ball.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
Welcome back to Severe Reaction here on 1620 The Zone. Let's get back to the phones. 402-951-1620. That's where Jim is this morning. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Listen, we want to talk about pre-1999, and when the ESPN magazine came out for its first issue, they had a centerfold that showed the Nebraska-Florida game.
Yes.
And they said, we knew Florida was fast. You open up the centerfold, and it said, we did not know Nebraska was faster. And I saw more speed last night than I have seen in probably 30 years down at Nebraska. And it's being developed. A lot of these players, will take Clark, for example. He was fast, but not that fast when he arrived at Nebraska. When they arrived at Nebraska. Anyway, Michael, I'm walking the dogs. I'm a little out of breath. I'll talk to you later.
All right, take it easy, Jim. Now, I agree with you there. Mosey's a great example of that. When he got that first broken tackle, you see the explosion he has. That is some really good speed. Now, Emmett Johnson's got quickness, but not long speed. And that 47-yard one, I thought maybe he would get run down, and he got run down on the one that was a little bit over 20. But just looking at them overall, yeah, I think they are. I'm concerned a little bit about some of the guys in the middle, like Watson Trent getting to the ball a little bit. I think Singleton yesterday, again, ran to the ball really well. I am kind of concerned a little bit that second level in terms of their speed. I think their corners are very fast and physical. Sierra Wright puts his hands on guys. Andrew Marshall does the exact same thing. Got beat a little bit later, but did a really good job of getting the guy down. I like the depth at safety. But overall, yeah, I'd agree completely that the speed is different from what we saw just 4 or 5 years ago on the team. There's no Maurice Washington, but maybe Mosey becomes that guy. Just not the same size that Maurice had, but there's some serious speed in there. Go back to the phones. That's where Brian is. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Michael. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. A little tired.
Good. Hey, I just wanted a couple things here. First off, I wanted to get your takes on what you think about Michigan in 2 weeks. But real quick here, a couple things thought. I think we're overrating this win. I think Akron was horrible.
They're bad.
But I guess you can only play who you can play.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say that Cade, can't pronounce his last name. That guy really pops on film, man. He's good. He's only a freshman, right?
Petchak?
Yeah.
Kid from North Dakota. Yeah, he's only a freshman, true freshman, been on campus. Woo. Yeah, didn't come on campus, I believe, until July.
Wow. We need him on the field. Wow.
Yeah, and he came in really early, too. Surprised a lot of people when he came in that early.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. I know. I just kind of wanted to see what you thought about the Michigan game. Just briefly and just kind of think, well, I mean, what are your thoughts? In 2 weeks, what do you think our chances are?
Yeah, Brian, we appreciate the call. I've said all along I thought Nebraska would beat Michigan. I think it's a combination of a freshman quarterback on the road again, not having their head coach there all week long, so that's another part of it as well. And I just don't feel that Michigan is explosive enough to really challenge Nebraska. The question is, when they line up, as I said with Sip, and they decide they're going to run the ball downhill, they couldn't really against Oklahoma. I don't know what the final rush totals was, but I was watching that game on and off as I'm watching the Nebraska game, and it seemed like Oklahoma was in the backfield the entire game. If Nebraska can do a little bit of that with their depth of defensive line and those guys at the second level, that would obviously make a difference. Force Bryce Underwood to beat you. You force him to beat you, whether it's his legs getting out of the pocket or making those tight throws. That's what you have to do. Big Red Junkies, I think that's Jed over on the YouTube chat, was talking about the interior offensive linemen and how they graded. It was very weird because run grade, 59.1 for Justin Evans, 57.8 for Henry Lutovsky, and Rocco Spindler, 54.3. But all three of those guys graded right around 80% or over. So 78 for Justin Evans pass grade, 80 for Lutovsky, and 86 for Spindler. Graded well in the pass game, but not necessarily in the run game. It's weird because, Nebraska obviously ran for a ton of yards. Now, Lutovsky had the one penalty, and Evans and Lutovsky both gave up hurries. But there were only 2 hurries given up by the offensive linemen, according to PFF. Prohaska had the most snaps, tied with Evans, Lutovsky, and Spindler. They all had 54. Prohaska overall, the 66.4, was second to Gunnar Gatula, who was 69.7. And then Turner Corcoran, who played not just as a offensive lineman on that one series as left tackle, but then came in those jumbo packages. He graded overall the best with 23 snaps at 74.9, almost 75. There's still a lot of questions. There just are. I mean, yeah, I know Akron's not good. I know Akron's not good when I finished going over the film and I only had 6 total guys, and one of them was the punter that I had to say maybe you have to watch out for. One of them was a kick returner who I speculated could be pretty good, and he didn't do much. There was a defensive lineman who actually recovered the fumble. There was a linebacker who led them in tackles. I thought one of the guys from the secondary, and then the running back who we weren't sure if he was going to play or not. And then maybe Michael Johnson because he was a Wildcat kind of guy. But other than that, there wasn't guys to really even look at and say, watch out for, which is a strange thing. You just don't see that a lot. But overall, you play who you play, and look at all the teams, look at all the games where other teams, and I went over these earlier, where really good teams struggled for most of the game against teams they were favored by 40, 35 against. Look at Penn State. It was 10-0 at the half against FIU. 10-0. Georgia struggled. Clemson struggled. South Carolina struggled. Colorado early on struggled. A lot of teams struggling. All you can do is go out there, play the team you play, and beat the hell out of them. And not have to worry about being in a 10-0 game at halftime, which I can't even imagine what it would have been like inside of Memorial Stadium if it had been 10-0 over Akron. When we come back, we'll look at some of the keys to the game that I had before going in, how they did with that, a quick and brief preview of next week's opponent in Houston Christian, and a little bit more, and take your phone calls as well. 402-951-1620, brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Answer the phone on the first ring and take care of you. And brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. We're back with more Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
Lost the yard, 2nd and 11. Shotgun snap to Latif. Guns one right, hard on the flat. Isaiah Mosey wiggles across the 35, breaks 2 tackles, 45. Burst to the second level, along the numbers inside the 40. Creative in open space down to the 36 of Akron. He would not be denied, the freshman Isaiah Mosey.
I think everyone has to get used to the fact that when Dylan plays really well, I don't want to see a ton of wow plays. I don't want to see him run around throwing the ball sideways. I want to see him play quarterback. And what Dylan's doing is he's playing quarterback. He's elite before the snap. And I just hope everyone, across the country appreciates it the way I know most of you guys do. Like, he's just getting us in the right play, making the right check. There's not a lot of things that are off. And most of playing quarterback happens actually before the snap. And I think he's just so elevated in that regard. So we're able to get to a lot of things. There's a lot of plays, I'm sure, when he looks at it, he'll say, I need to do this better, that better. But I just think he's ascending and getting better and better every week.
Welcome back to a reaction here on 1620 The Zone, 402-951-1620. Looking at that Michigan game in 2 weeks, based off of the power rankings, and things get updated throughout today, but based off of the current power rankings I see, Nebraska could be a 1-point favorite in that game. They really could. So basing that off of the power rankings, yes, Nebraska being at home, don't always give 3 points for home. I mean, there's some home field advantages that are more than 3, and there's some that less. So you go with like 2.5. And then you add in the fact that they won't have their head coach. So all that together, I wouldn't be shocked. It's all going to depend on what they think they can get in terms of money. Like, they think, I assume if they set Nebraska as a favorite, they would get a ton of Michigan cash pretty quickly. I'm guessing. If they set Michigan as a, 2.5, 2-point favorite, which is kind of where it was going into them losing Oklahoma and Nebraska beating up on Akron, I think you'd get a good amount of money as well on Nebraska. So however they do it, I think they're going to get the money they're looking for, but I would not be surprised if next Sunday, if that's when it comes out, because let me see, that game's at 2:30. So yeah, it probably wouldn't be until late Saturday night or early Sunday that line comes out. I wouldn't be surprised if Nebraska is a -1 at home. I wouldn't be. It's certainly a possibility because the loss to Oklahoma, they didn't look great, but the number had already been dropping. I know some of the analytic folks had, Michigan as like an 8-point favorite or 9-point favorite early on, like during the offseason, but that's not what came out from Vegas. So we'll see what ends up happening. We went over what went right, but there are some things, obviously you got Emmett's fumble at the goal line. I think it was only his 3rd career fumble. I remember the one where he's going backwards and he gets hit, he fumbles. And then I remember another one where he's running and the helmet is red on the ball, but I don't think he has more than that. Nebraska in the red zone. One of the keys to this game and the keys to the season and the keys to successful football is finishing drives. Successful drives, you're over the opponent's 40-yard line, you get a touchdown or a field goal. Don't have any empty drives. Now, Nebraska had a heck of a performance. They had 12 successful drives. They scored 68 points. That's 5.6 points a successful drive. That is what we talk about being successful. The top teams getting over 5 over 5.5 is great. But 2 times in the red zone, the fumble, and then the ending on downs, trying to do the tush push with Heinrich Harburg. What can I mean, after the field goal, what did they score on 6 straight touchdowns? I mean, or 7?
Yeah, it was 12-0. So yeah, it was around that.
Yeah. So I mean, look, they did well. They scored 68 points on 73 plays. Because of that, Nebraska is currently 11th in the FBS in points per play because of what they did yesterday. Because they weren't bad last week against Cincinnati. They were top 40, but now they're at 11th because of the fact that what they did. So they weren't bad. It's just anytime you have a no production or no point production and you're inside the 5, that's disappointing. and it happened twice. It can't happen. At 18 big plays for 500 yards, 13 passing, 5 rushing. I'm kind of surprised by that. I thought they would have more rushing, not more than passing, but just more than 5. And then field position, something we're going to look at all year long. Nebraska won the field position battle by 18 yards. Average start for Nebraska 40, Akron 22. That's going to really help the overall numbers for Nebraska for the rest of the season until they start playing.
It was pretty favorable with the punt returns from Ja'Cory
Oh,
Barney,
yeah.
and then the shank punt in the first half where Nebraska had probably, I think they were at the 38-yard line. This was right before halftime, so pretty favorable from the special teams.
And of course, they had to start a drive at the 1-yard line because of a fumble, and the 2-yard line because of 2-yard line because of the fumble, and 1-yard line because of what happened with Heinrich Harburg. So yeah, it was a bad time field position wise for a team that needed all the breaks they could get, and they weren't getting those breaks.
Yeah,
but it shows that those numbers, so points per play, offense, defense, field position, incredibly important, and finishing drives. Those are the 3 that I think if they're successful, if they're going to be successful, those have to get better from what Nebraska's been over the last few years. But anyway, I'm kind of curious what people think about the new radio guy, who I listen to a lot of the game. I mainly listen to highlights because as I have the game being recorded, when a highlight happens, I'll go back and I'll listen and mark the area. And so I hear that. I hear some of the discussion between him and Damon. But you got to remember, it takes a long time to build chemistry, a long time. Whether it's a radio partner, it's a play-by-play partner, it's a marriage. I mean, it takes a while to build good chemistry. And these guys have been together for 2 games. So you got to wait. And I've seen it take over a year. But I am kind of curious what people think so far. It's really hard to follow not only a guy that everybody liked in Greg Sharp, but obviously a guy who had ended the way it did for him, by him dying. So I wish all the luck in the world to the new guy. And I hope he does a great job. I think so far he's got a lot of energy. And I think he does a really good job in terms of those highlight plays. I think sometimes his scene setting has got to be a little bit better. That's the one thing if I was going to say, and hell, I'm not a play-by-play guy, but just based off of what, looking at it, I think the scene setting and establishing and telling people what's happening is something he's got to tweak a little bit. Hell, this happens to professionals, guys who've been doing it for 30, 40 years, don't necessarily do the setup right. That's the one thing I would say. Great Woman 79 said Sharp probably had his quirks too. Nothing comes to mind right now. But he was so damn beloved. The guy ain't bad at all, just different. And now Husker Nation, Damon's a little low energy. I don't know about that. Damon has plenty of energy when they score. I think Damon spends a lot of time, and this is what I want from my color analyst, is telling me what happened and then what might happen based off of the situation. I want you to look down on the field. I talked about this earlier. When the offense comes in, what's the package? What's the alignment? What might happen because of that? Defense, what alignment they're in, what maybe they can do based off of that. Do you see a chance of a pass rush, a weakness in the offensive line or the offense? That's what I want to hear. And I think Damon does a good job at all of that. So that's a big part of what you have to do.
That's kind of his purpose. He adds flavor to the broadcast and educates the listeners on how the game works and what's actually going on.
A big part is seasoning. That's you're layering seasoning in, and you can't be at the top level of energy the whole way through. You just can't. You have to kind of ride the wave of the game as it's going along. And then when you have a game like last night, there's nothing harder to call. I did color a lot, but there's nothing harder to call, I'm assuming as a play-by-play guy, is a blowout because you have to fill. And even though Nebraska's scoring a lot, you're still like trying to fill with other information. And I mean, it's tough. I'd almost personally rather have a 0-0 game to call because of the drama of it than having a game that is 68-0. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We will look at those keys to the game. And again, a brief look ahead to next week's opponent in Houston Christian. We come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
3rd down and 9 at the 3-yard line. Akron in the shadows of their own goal line. Full house pistol. Finley claps for the snap, takes, hand off. That's a safety. Jordan Gadd is swung down by Cade Petchock. Indeed, welcome to college football, young man. Gets the safety. 9-0 Huskers. 33-yard attempt here from Owen Wiley. Missed from 46. That would have been a career high. This is 9th career attempt from the left hash. Snap back, hold is down. The kick is blocked. It's blocked. Riley Van Poppel coming out of the fray and celebrating as the Huskers special teams get the job done. And it was Van Poppel got his hand on it.
Cam, Williams, and Cade at the same position, and they're all 3 really good players. And so it's just sort of the position, right? Like they all kind of fit that. So just trying to move guys around. Like Cam Lenhart played nose tackle tonight at one point. Like he was in our 5-down package. I think Cade's an excellent player. I think he makes big plays. He plays really hard. The more he plays, the better he'll get.
Welcome back to Reaction here on 1620 The Zone, brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally, and Nebraska Medicine. Join the team at Nebraska Medicine, nebraskamed.com/careers. 402-951-1620, the Jay Senate contracting hotline, 402-951-1620. Cornnut says, Mike, are you concerned about the interior defensive line and their ability to stop the run against Michigan? Talked about this earlier with Sip. Yeah, I mean, because we don't know. We saw all we have in terms of playing against another Power 4 opponent is what we saw against Cincinnati. And we did see Cincinnati break off some runs. Obviously, much of that was led by the quarterback. But on the other hand, the running backs did have a little bit over 100 yards together. So you do worry about that. Oklahoma's front dominated that game last night. Michigan replacing a lot of players with a freshman quarterback against a seasoned defensive coordinator / head coach. They gave them major issues. Now, does Nebraska have that kind of defensive line to play on the other side of the ball? I don't know. We haven't seen it. It's nice to see Cade Petchock play the way he has. Keona Davis, watching him, I thought he made some nice plays. Noweri still, again, had the most snaps out of anybody on the defensive line. There's a lot of work that has to be done. And as Coach was talking about in that last part, between Cade and what Cam Lenhart can do, and you also have Van Poppel and all those guys, they have to figure out a good rotation. And they have one right now. If you notice the rotation, the second team rotation was Van Poppel, and it was Petchock, and it was, I think it was Cam was the other person on that rotation. Maybe it was Noweri. But, they are working on putting together a rotation. Michigan is always going to be able to run the ball, right? That's going to be their desire. They want to run the ball, and they're going to be able to usually run the ball. Last night, when they could not run the ball, you saw what happened to them, and you saw the struggles they had. If Nebraska can force that and force their quarterback, force the young Bryce Underwood to make plays, then I wouldn't be surprised that Nebraska wins the game. I picked Nebraska to win the game all offseason. I thought they could win the game, but still Michigan. You still got to make it happen. You still got to do something you haven't done. You got to beat her, and I don't know what Michigan will be ranked. You still got a big ranked team, and it's been a long, is it 23 or 25, like straight losses?
It's around there because I think the last time was the Oregon game,
Oregon in 2016. Yeah. So, and for that one, I believe, I don't know if Oregon was ranked in both polls or not. I think that's like a one poll thing.
Yeah, I think it was a one poll thing. They were in the bottom of the 20s in that top 25.
Well, you still got to do something you haven't done in a long time. You got to beat a ranked team. I know it's at home. I know it's a freshman quarterback. I know it's without their head coach, but we still have to wait to see it happen. And until it happens, we can only talk about hoping to see it happen. So, but in terms of the radio crew, let them work together, let them get all the kinks worked out, and then come back to me, and also in a competitive game too, which is a lot more fun to call. So all of that is the case as well. We'll take our final break. When we come back, looking ahead to Houston Christian and what they have to offer when Nebraska plays them next week. We're on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Now, back to Severe Reaction, powered by Nebraska Medicine and Equitable Bank. We take banking personally. Here's your host, Michael Severe, on 1620 The Zone.
40 on a turning clock ball at the 9, first and goal. 3 wide right, Latif out of the gun. Connor Britt, the running back, to his right. Snap, Latif keeps, runs right, he's in! Touchdown Huskers! Latif pulled it, ran right. He had 1 touchdown taken away. Can't get that one taken away. He's in for 6, and the Huskers now have 67 on the board. First career score for number 14.
We're not here to comment on the overall. We're here to just keep fixing all the things that we see, and different things will come up. So, but I think a lot of in general, all 3 sides put it together. So pleased with that. We're in there. They called everyone up, and even Marquise was like, "Yeah, we've never done this before. We've never had a 68-0. Again, that's not an FCS game. That's a group of 5 team, and so happy for them that they did that. Just won't. At the end of the year, we won't be talking about this game. So we did it. Now we got to move on.
Yeah, did it, and now move on. That's exactly the expression you have to have after this game. People are going to all week when they talk about it, they're going to give you that stipulation and say, "Hey, it was at Akron." That's fine. You have to accomplish certain things. People used to get mad about Bo Pelini talking about the process. No one got mad about Nick Saban talking about the process because his process led to national champions. Bo's process led to going to some conference championship games and winning a bunch of games, but it didn't lead to that ultimate goal. There is a true process in this whole thing. There is winning that game 1 against Cincinnati that you haven't won. There is taking care of business when you're supposed to take care of business on a team that you're favored by 5 touchdowns. There's that. There is going into next week at 11 o'clock against Houston Christian and going, look, we're going to go out there just like we did last week. We're going to take care of business, and we're going to then finish that game, come out without injuries, and go in and have Michigan come in here and take care of business with them. Each step has to be accomplished. And you really can't skip them. There are times where coaches and programs try to skip steps, And those are usually the ones that fail. You have to go through that entire process. And that's where Nebraska is now. And you can all week talk about, well, just Akron. Akron's the worst team I've seen. They're not good. But you know who wasn't great? Middle Tennessee wasn't great yesterday. They're in the game late. Delaware's not great. They're in the game late. Penn State, I keep saying it, it was 10-0 at halftime.
Did not look that great for the Nittany line.
No, and they had to have a return, a turnover return, and a bomb to even get to that point, you know? So anyway, Houston Christian coming in next week. They're 1-1 now. They were 18-point dogs to a very good Eastern Kentucky team that actually lost in week 1, and they covered. 20-10 was the final. Jake Weir is their quarterback, under 50% completion in week 2. Of course, they had a big number, 69-0 last week, but he didn't have a huge game last week either. So 1 touchdown, 211 yards. They have a guy named, I think it's Zyshawn. It's XAI apostrophe Sean Edwards. I think it's Zyshawn. Had a big game in week 1. This week, 10 carries for just 25 yards. It's Houston Christian, man. They're an FCS team. They used to be Houston Baptist, in case you remember that. They were a very good baseball program over the years. The quarterback is not a running quarterback, if you're worried about that being a problem. But Jake Weir was 7 rushes for minus 23 yards. Obviously, that's the sacks. Total, they ran the ball 32 times with those minus yards for 42 yards with a long of 8. So that's who's coming in. They fumbled. They turned the ball over quite a bit. They had 4 turnovers against Eastern Kentucky yesterday, and they end up losing the game 20-10. That's who's coming in next week. The process. Go in motivated. I know you're playing an FCS team. You go in motivated. You beat them. You get out of there. You get ready for Michigan. You get ready for the next step in the process, and that is beating a ranked team that you may be favored against when next Sunday comes around. Not sure, though. We'll be back next Sunday, of course, 8 a.m. on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the NFL, everybody.